Although Tekken is now a multi-platform series, back in the 90s the brand was synonymous with Sony's PlayStation, with the first 3 games appearing exclusively on PS1, a trend that continued through the PS2 era and only ended with the release of Tekken 6 on PS3 and Xbox 360. Unlike the popular Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat games at the time, Tekken was part of a new generation of fighting games that used 3D polygons instead of 2D sprites. Rather than focusing on projectile attacks, Tekken had a more grounded approach, with moves that were closer to traditional martial arts styles, and instead of having different buttons dictate the power of each move, each button was mapped to a different limb. This gave the game a more intuitive pick-up-and-play learning curve that helped the game find a wider audience than the traditional younger gamer, something that became a trend for PlayStation games at the time. The first Tekken was released on PlayStation in early 1995 in Japan, with Western releases following later that year. Although it missed the launch date in each territory, the game's release was close enough to still fit into the launch window and served as an early showcase of what the first PlayStation console was capable of. The game was ported from the arcade version which, being based on PlayStation hardware, enabled Namco to produce a very faithful recreation when it came to the PlayStation version. The PlayStation version also came with some additional enhancements, the most significant of which was to allow all the sub-bosses and the final boss HEIHACHI to become fully playable characters once unlocked, as opposed to the arcade version, where all of these characters were only playable by the CPU. In something of a trend for Namco games at the time, Tekken presented gamers with a playable version of Gallagher while the game was loaded. If you managed to survive to the end and destroy all of the aliens, it unlocked the devil version of KAZUYA, who is the final boss if you play through with the original boss HEIHACHI. From a technical standpoint, Tekken uses a resolution of 512 by 240, and in NTSC countries at least, runs at 60 frames per second, which gave the impression of a very fluid motion. However, in the UK and other PAL territories, the frame rate was cut down to 50 frames per second in order to match the television standard at the time, which introduces a noticeable judder compared to the NTSC release. Starting off, you are presented with 8 playable characters, and unlike later games, there are no placeholders for the unlockable characters, so you may not realise they are unlockable at first. The initial roster consists of Jack, Kazuya Mishima, King, Martial Law, Michelle Chang, Nina Williams, Paul Phoenix, and Yoshimitsu. Each character has their own storyline that explores their reason for entering the King of Iron Fist tournament, and their outcome if they win. Jack is the classic, big, slow and powerful character of the game, much like Zangief from Street Fighter, who also happens to be Russian just like Jack. While there is a Jack character in every Tekken game except Tekken 4, each one tends to be a completely new model and is technically a different character almost every time. Jack's lack of speed can make it difficult to land an attack against a skilled opponent, but this is offset by his incredible reach. Kazuya Mishima is ostensibly the main character of the first game's storyline. The son of Heihachi Mishima, Kazuya enters the tournament to exact revenge on his father for throwing him off a cliff when he was a child. His plan is then to take control of his family's company, the Mishima Zaibatsu. He's not the fastest fighter, but he has some powerful strikes and is particularly suited to defensive play. He uses a fictional style of karate known as Mishima-style fighting karate. King is a masked wrestler who entered the tournament in the hope that he could use the prize money to fund an orphanage. Despite the fact that he is a human character, he growls like a jaguar and has a fully animated tail. As a wrestler, he has a strong focus on throws and works well in close quarters combat. Martial Law works at a Chinese restaurant in San Francisco and has entered the tournament in order to fund the opening of his own martial arts school. The character is heavily inspired by Bruce Lee, and as such many of his moves share similarities with Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do art. The likeness even extends to his default yellow tracksuit outfit, which is a direct reference to the one worn by Bruce Lee in his 1978 movie Game of Death. He is a quick, short-range fighter with a strongly offensive fighting style. Michelle Chang is a wandering fighter whose father was from Hong Kong and whose mother was a Native American. Her father was sent by HEIHACHI to locate an ancient treasure thought to be buried on Native American land, but the treasure never found its way to HEIHACHI, and Michelle's father was killed by HEIHACHI's thugs. After learning about her father's murder on her 18th birthday, Michelle vows to take revenge on HEIHACHI and enters the King of Iron Fist tournament. Although Michelle is one of the weaker characters, she makes up with this with her speed and powerful combos, and her fighting style is a mix of several traditional Chinese martial arts.
You win. Round 2.
Nina Williams is a trained assassin who learned assassination techniques from her father and Aikido from her mother. She has a very close relationship with her father. Ostensibly, she has been sent to the tournament in order to assassinate HEIHACHI, but her rivalry with her sister Anna may also be part of her motivation. She has a fast, powerful moveset and is a good choice for players new to the game. Paul Phoenix is an American fighter who previously fought KAZUYA to a draw and is looking for a rematch. He lives to fight and uses his own hybrid style of martial arts inspired by judo. He is a very powerful fighter with strong offensive moves and effective combos. Yoshimitsu is a ninja and the leader of the Manji clan, who plan on stealing the prize fund from the King of Iron Fist tournament while Yoshimitsu himself enters the tournament as a distraction. He wears a mask to disguise his true identity and is somewhat of a Robin Hood character, giving away the money he steals to people in need. He wields a sword and uses a blended fighting style called Advanced Manji Ninjutsu, which incorporates elements of ninjutsu, kenjutsu and batujutsu. Yoshimitsu is also the name of a character in the Soul Calibur series, though this is a completely separate character to the one in Tekken. The reason for their likeness is that the appearance and name of Yoshimitsu are given to each leader of the Manji clan when they succeed the previous leader. This way, the Yoshimitsu figurehead lives on through the centuries and can never really be destroyed while the Manji clan exists. Tekken's unlockable sub-bosses are loosely based on each of the main characters, and finishing the game with the main character will automatically unlock the corresponding sub-boss. The sub-bosses are Anna, Armor King, Ganryu, Kuma, Kunomitsu, Lee, P-Jack and Wang. In addition to the sub-bosses, you can also unlock the main boss, HEIHACHI, after beating the arcade mode in under 5.5 minutes without losing a fight, and you can unlock Devil by beating the Galaga loading game. Armor King is King's main rival, sub-boss and fellow wrestler. In a previous fight, King accidentally damaged Armor King's eye, causing his wrestling career to go downhill while King became more and more successful. Armor King has entered the tournament to defeat King and use this to return to prominence in the wrestling world. Anna Williams is a trained assassin and the little sister and sub-boss of Nina Williams. Anna rejected the life her training prepared her for and instead seeks a normal life outside of being an assassin. As a result, she has developed a bitter rivalry with Nina, who, unlike Anna, is showered with affection from their father. Her moves are very similar to Nina's, though this changes in later games as she develops her own style. Ganryu is a sumo wrestler and the sub-boss for Yoshimitsu. He is a powerful fighter, but his poor behaviour and lack of respect for the standard required of a sumo wrestler have held him back, and have meant he is unable to achieve the rank of Yokozuna, the Grand Sumo Champion. Having been pushed away from the top prize of sumo wrestling, Ganryu has entered the King of Iron Fist tournament to prove his strength. Kuma is the sub-boss for Paul Phoenix and is Heihachi's pet bear, having been found abandoned in the woods surrounding the Mishima estate. He has been taught to communicate using basic hand signals and received martial arts training from Heihachi himself. Kunimitsu is a former member of Yoshimitsu's Manji clan and the sub-boss for Michelle. Yoshimitsu expelled her from the clan after she stole for her own gain rather than to help the poor. She has entered the King of Iron Fist tournament in order to steal the treasure that Heihachi sent Michelle's father to find. Lee Chaolan is Heihachi's adopted son and the sub-boss of KAZUYA, as well as his main rival. After his parents died at a young age, Heihachi took Lee into his household and trained him in martial arts in order to provide a challenge to KAZUYA. Prototype Jack, or P-Jack for short, is the sub-boss of Jack and is an earlier experimental model built for raw power. Heihachi himself entered P-Jack into the tournament in order to combat Jack. Wang Jinrei is martial law's sub-boss, and he was also a close friend of Heihachi's father, Jinpachi. While Wang is a kind and brave man, he supports Heihachi out of loyalty to his father, but doesn't know the full extent of Heihachi's actions. Heihachi Mishima is the head of the Mishima Financial Group and the main boss of the game. His company sponsors the King of Iron Fist tournament and is using the tournament as a way to gather the world's most powerful fighters for his army. Devil is essentially just a third costume for the main KAZUYA character, and shares exactly the same moveset as well as the same intro and ending movies. This would change from Tekken 2 onwards, where Devil became a standalone character in his own right. Tekken has 11 playable stages, all of which are outdoors, and unlike later games aren't tied to any specific characters. All the stages use two-dimensional backgrounds mapped onto an infinitely scrolling floor to give the illusion of a 3D movement plane. The stages are Acropolis in Greece, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, Chicago in the USA, the island of Fiji, King George Island in Antarctica, Kyoto in Japan, Chiba Marine Stadium in Japan, Monument Valley in the USA, Sichuan in China, Venice in Italy, and Windermere in the UK. There are only two game modes, Arcade Mode and Two-Player Mode. Arcade Mode requires you to play through 7 fights against random characters from the game's roster, followed by an 8th fight against your character's sub-boss, and then a final fight against the game's boss. Playing through with any of the regular characters will show you their ending movie, whereas finishing the game with any of the sub-bosses or Heihachi will simply take you straight back to the credits. After the success of Tekken, a sequel was inevitable, and Tekken 2 was released in arcades in August 1995 and on PlayStation the following year. The game's scope was significantly expanded and received critical acclaim across the board, along with massive worldwide sales, ultimately becoming one of the best-selling games in the world at the time. From a gameplay point of view, Tekken 2 took everything that worked in the previous game and improved it, to the point where it quickly became one of the definitive fighters of the era. Movesets were expanded, and the addition of counter throws helped make the combat feel more dynamic. Including all of the unlockable characters, the total number of playable characters has increased to 25, and all the sub-bosses and bosses now have their own ending movies. Graphically, the game still runs at the same 512 by 240 resolution as its predecessor, but the addition of light sourcing, more detailed stages, and a higher polygon count for the characters gave everything a visual step up. Unlike its predecessor, Tekken 2 was ported from an arcade board that had much higher specs than the original PlayStation, so some sacrifices were made in the process, but overall it's a noticeable improvement. Tekken 2 continues the storyline of the first game, but assumes that KAZUYA won the tournament and uses this as the basis for the story. HEIHACHI, defeated and shamed by his son's victory, is now one of the initially playable characters, and KAZUYA is now the game's penultimate boss, with his alter ego Devil being the new final boss. This time around, KAZUYA has organised the tournament as a show of power and dominance. There are 10 playable characters available to begin with: HEIHACHI, Jack 2, Jun Kazama, King, Lei Wulong, Martial Law, Michelle Chang, Nina Williams, Paul Phoenix, and Yoshimitsu. Of these, 8 are returning characters from the first game, or at least near identical clones, with Jun and Lei being the newcomers. HEIHACHI, now humbled and reduced to the status of a regular tournament contestant, retreated to the mountains after losing the first King of Iron Fist tournament, where he spent time in training with Kuma. With the announcement of the second King of Iron Fist tournament, HEIHACHI has returned to defeat KAZUYA and take back his empire. Jack 2 is a new and improved version of the Jack model that took part in the first tournament. One of a series of models, Jack 2 was deployed into a biological warfare zone where he came across a girl trapped under a pile of rubble. Going against his orders, he rescued the girl and escaped from the war zone with her. Having learnt that his creator, Dr. Boskonovich, is being held captive by KAZUYA, Jack 2 has entered the tournament to free the Doctor and ask for his help in becoming more human.
You win. Round 2.
Jun Kazama is a member of a wildlife protection agency and has entered the tournament as a ruse to arrest KAZUYA for the smuggling of protected animals. She has a strong spiritual connection to the natural world and has sensed an evil force surrounding KAZUYA and hopes to use her powers to free him of this. Her moveset is based on Kazama traditional martial arts, a fighting style based on jiu-jitsu and handed down through her family for generations. Jun works well as a defensive fighter and has a strong set of throws and chain attacks. King returns after coming third in the previous tournament, which provided sufficient funding to set up his orphanage. Over time, however, the orphanage started to run out of money, and King turned to a life of drinking, causing his life to spiral out of control. Encouraged by his old rival Armor King, King has decided to enter the second King of Iron Fist tournament as a way of rebuilding his life through training.
You win.
Lei Wulong is a police detective from Hong Kong whose partner was killed after pursuing a mafia-related money laundering operation. Having picked up the trail of his partner's investigation, Lei discovers information that links the money laundering to KAZUYA, and he enters the tournament with the intention of confronting him. His complex playstyle makes him a difficult choice for beginners, but he can be a formidable opponent in the hands of a more advanced player. His fighting style is a mixture of Wu Xing and Drunken Fist, as used by Jackie Chan in the 1978 movie Drunken Master. Martial Law fell on hard times after failing to win the first tournament, but he was given a helping hand by Yoshimitsu, who gave Law the money to set up his own dojo. Law's dream was short-lived, however, as soon after a mysterious taekwondo master smashed up the dojo and attacked his students. After discovering that the taekwondo master was participating in the second King of Iron Fist tournament, Law himself entered in order to avenge his injured students and restore his school's honour. Michelle returns to the King of Iron Fist tournament to rescue her mother, who has been kidnapped by Kazuya's forces. Michelle possesses a pendant, which is the treasure her father was sent to recover prior to the first tournament, and is allegedly the key to an unknown power of some kind. Kazuya wants the pendant for himself, so he kidnaps Michelle's mother in an attempt to lure her to the tournament.
Hey-yo! You win.
Nina has once again entered the King of Iron Fist tournament with the intention of assassinating Kazuya, but secretly planning to settle the score with her sister Anna once and for all. Despite showing favouritism to Nina over her sister, their father Richard begs Nina to reconcile with Anna from his deathbed, but Nina's hatred is too strong for her father's pleas.
Hey-yo! You win.
Paul finished the first King of Iron Fist tournament in second place, after beating Kuma in the previous round but ultimately losing to Kazuya. Having resumed training with his friend Martial Law, Paul hears news of a second tournament and enters in the hope of another chance at victory.
Hey-yo! You win.
Yoshimitsu is still the leader of the Manji clan, and has entered the second King of Iron Fist tournament in order to free Dr. Boskonovich, who once saved Yoshimitsu's life during a botched raid and fitted him with a prosthetic arm. The cast of unlockable characters has expanded to match the main roster, with a total of 10 sub-bosses, plus 2 unlockable main bosses and 3 bonus characters. The sub-bosses consist of Anna, Armor King, Baekdu-san, Bruce, Ganryu, Kuma, Kunimitsu, Lee, P-Jack and Wang. In addition, finishing the game with any sub-boss will unlock Kazuya as a playable character, and beating the game with Kazuya will unlock Devil. If you want to unlock Roger, you will need to beat the third fight of the game with just a small amount of health remaining. This will cause the announcer to say "Great," and your next fight will be against Roger. If you beat him and then complete the game, he will be unlocked as a playable character. To play as Angel, you need to unlock Devil by beating the game as Kazuya, and then select Devil's alternative costume. To play as Alex, you need to do the same thing, but with selecting Roger instead. Anna returns to the tournament as a bodyguard for Kazuya, knowing that Nina intends to assassinate him, leaving the sisters heading for a direct confrontation to settle their scores. Despite seeking revenge against King in the first tournament, Armor King has since developed a friendly rivalry with King, and the two have become close comrades. When King fell into a bad way after the orphanage ran out of money, Armor King took it upon himself to help King retrain and get ready for the second tournament. Armor King has entered himself looking for a friendly rematch with King.
You win.
Baek Do-san is a taekwondo master who accidentally killed his father while sparring. This sent Baek into a downward spiral and ultimately ended up with him destroying Martial Law's dojo while on a rampage. Baek then challenged Law to a fight as part of the second King of Iron Fist tournament. Bruce is a world champion kickboxer whose early life on the streets pushed him towards fighting as a way to earn money. Having entered and won a famous Muay Thai kickboxing tournament in Thailand, a contract was taken out on Bruce's life by criminal bookmakers. This would have been successful were it not for the intervention of the Hong Kong police, who intercepted the would-be killers on a plane taking Bruce out of Thailand. The plane crashed and only Bruce survived, having been rescued by Kazuya's forces who found him lost in the wilderness. Bruce eventually took a job working for Kazuya as a bodyguard.
Fight!
Ganryu is now another one of Kazuya's bodyguards, having lost against Yoshimitsu in the first King of Iron Fist tournament. While he has officially entered the second tournament as part of his bodyguard duties, he has also his own motive. Having fallen in love with Michelle Chang during the first tournament, Ganryu hopes to impress her by using the prize fund to set up his own sumo arena.
You win!
Kuma has spent the time since the last tournament training with HEIHACHI in the mountains. Having lost to Paul the first time around, Kuma has entered the second tournament in order to exact his revenge. Kunamitsu failed in her attempt to gain Michelle's pendant during the first tournament, but now has set her sights on a new prize, the mystical sword of the Manji clan that Yoshimitsu currently possesses. She intends to steal the sword from Yoshimitsu and give it to her grandfather, who has spent his life trying to attain a sword of this quality.
You win! Round 2. Fight!
Lee was defeated by Kazuya in the first King of Iron Fist tournament and became a member of Kazuya's household staff. Having given up hope on surpassing his adoptive brother, Lee was eventually approached by Wang Jinrei, who asked for Lee's help in defeating Kazuya and restoring honour to the Mishima Zaibatsu. Prototype Jack was despondent after losing to Jack in the first tournament. After much persuasion, Kazuya agreed to upgrade Prototype Jack and provided additional armour plating, though at the cost of overwriting some of his memory storage. He enters the second tournament in the hope of using his upgraded specs to finally defeat his arch-rival Jack.
You win!
Wang has come to realise the level of abuse and corruption at the Mishima Zaibatsu, and has entered the second King of Iron Fist tournament to tutor and support Lee in bringing honour back to the Empire. Kazuya is now the head of the Mishima Zaibatsu, and has held a second King of Iron Fist tournament in order to prove his dominance in the position his father once held. He also hopes to expand upon his father's work and build an independent nation of which he is the head.
Perfect! You win!
Roger is a genetically enhanced kangaroo designed with enhanced strength and speed. He was created by Dr. Boskonovich as part of Kazuya's project to test animals for military use.
Hey-oh!
Alex is a genetically modified Deinonychus, created by Dr. Boskonovich in a Jurassic Park-style splicing of dinosaur and kangaroo DNA. Like Roger, he was created as part of Kazuya's project to test animals for military use.
Hey-oh! You win!
Devil is a demon who strikes a deal with Kazuya during the first tournament, giving Kazuya the power to overthrow his father at the cost of giving up his soul. At the end of the second tournament, however, HEIHACHI is able to defeat Kazuya, which triggers a full manifestation of Devil's powers within Kazuya's broken body.
You win!
Angel is the final boss when playing through as Devil, and battles to save Kazuya's soul from being completely consumed by evil. Tekken 2 features an expanded set of fighting stages, each tied to a particular fighter. Like the first game, the stages use 2D backdrops with an infinitely scrolling playfield, though stages can incorporate limited 3D movement due to the addition of sidestep moves for Kazuya and HEIHACHI. Tekken 2 expands on the basic set of modes from the first game, and in addition to the basic arcade mode, also includes survival mode, team battle mode, and time attack mode. Survival mode allows the player to fight an endless succession of battles, only regaining a small amount of health each time until the player is eventually defeated. Team Battle allows you to handpick a team of up to 8 fighters to compete against a CPU team of the same number. Like Survival Mode, only a small amount of health is regained between bouts. Time Attack Mode is a version of Arcade Mode with predefined settings and without the ability to pause a fight. The idea is to complete it in the shortest time possible, with the total time recorded shown at the end instead of an ending movie. In Japan, a theatre mode was also added, allowing players to view any of the in-game movies they have unlocked, though this feature was absent from the Western releases of the game. Tekken 2 was an immediate success and elevated the series to become one of the most popular fighting game series of all time. Namco didn't let things rest there, however, and would soon go on to develop Tekken 3, the biggest and best game of the series so far. Join us next time to continue the story.